All right, here we are. Welcome to Weather Legends on this Wednesday afternoon here in the metro New York area. We've got some of our legends joining us today, and they certainly are. Pat Pagano, longtime radio personality and meteorologist here in the New York area. Bill Corbell, longtime News 12 meteorologist.
Will you stop saying that?
Just long time.
Experience. Long time.
Makes him feel old. I know. I'm getting there. And Joe Rayo, let me see, expert on many things, going way back in the day. And boy, it's been a pleasure working with the guys so far. And we've got a little conversation today to kind of supplement some of the things we've been talking about. If you check out our site on YouTube, you can see all the bios there and all the influences and all our stories that have begun to be posted. Hope you're enjoying those. We had our first episode last week talking about weather technology. Today, Bill Corbell has brought to my attention, he wants to talk about weather balloons. Bill, what do you want to talk about those weather balloons? What's going on?
Talking about balloons, weather balloons. They've been around since like 1925 or 30 or something like that. But there is a serious aspect here. You know, there have been budget cuts, and some of them have been reflected in the National Weather Service and Noaa. And I was looking to get the data from one of these balloon flights. Let me back up first of all. Across the country, there are about 70 sites where we do launch balloons. The National Weather Service does. These carry an instrument package up all the way up to 70, 80,000 feet. And as it goes up, it measures the temperature, it measures moisture, it measures winds, and it's tracked through GPS. So you get wind speeds at different altitudes. And this gives you a cross section of the atmosphere. And if you look at the map, you can see that they're nicely spaced across the country. And twice a day, not just here, but worldwide, these balloons are launched and they send the data back. They're launched at 12 Greenwich Mean Time and midnight Greenwich Mean Time, again, twice a day. And that data, a lot of it goes into the computer models we use. I use it in aviation a lot. You can find from these soundings, if you look at a plot, I think you can see the plot. Rich may have one there to show you. You can see the temperature, different altitudes. You can determine how stable or unstable the atmosphere is. This data is critical for determining whether there'll be thunderstorms and severe thunderstorms. And there's a sample plot. The red line is the temperature, and the green line is the dew point or moisture. The lines that slant up from the lower left to upper right, those are temperature. You see the temperatures on the bottom. Now on the left, the altitudes. Those altitudes are in millibars. But basically, in this one, I'm looking at the area where the red line and green line get close together. That's where there are clouds. So if I'm flying and I look at this, I can see this looks like there are clouds starting about 10,000, maybe 12,000 feet up to about 20,000 feet. So you have to be either below or above that to be out of the clouds. Anyway, here's the thing. Go back to the map, Rich, of the U.S. launch sites. Because of budgetary cuts and the possibility of maintaining these and using them, we have lost 11 of these sites. 9 of them just going down to once a day, but 2 of them in Omaha and Rapid City, South Dakota, nothing at all. Even farther east, Green Bay, Wisconsin, there's one in northern Michigan, Albany, New York, only twice a day. Why is this important? Well, you know where Tornado Alley is for once, and that runs from South Dakota to northern Texas. Look at the big gap in data now that's out there. So I'm not an expert on computer models and how they work and how much data comes from this. I know we also get upper air data from airliners too. They send it down. But I can't help but think that maybe this lack of data could cause some forecast problems, short term, certainly, and especially when it comes to severe weather. And for somebody like me, if I'm flying out of western Nebraska and I have to try to estimate the cloud decks and where there may be turbulence, now I may not have the information I want. So I don't know. What do you guys think? I just hope this isn't a reflection of where it's going, because what happens if all of a sudden they can't maintain a Doppler radar? Can you imagine if in Kansas City or somewhere in Tornado Alley or even here, Doppler goes down, you won't know what's coming.
Yeah, I think the question is to Joe Rayo maybe, is it make a really big difference, do you think, in your opinion?
I think so. Especially during those times in the wintertime when we're looking at, Bill mentioned about, for example, here in New York State, we lost Albany in terms of sending radiosonde data up. I mean, sometimes you'll see on television forecasters promoting a potential big storm coming our way a week from now. It could mean a lot of snow, whatever. And I've often said, well, let's wait until we're within 3 days of the storm, because by then we can input more data, in part from those radiosonde observations, into the computer guidance, and then get a more accurate, a better idea of what may actually happen or what may not happen. But now, we're within 3 days of the event and we're losing some of this data, as Bill pointed out, over parts of the northern plains and here in the Northeast. I mean, that's going to make it all the more difficult to try to discern exactly what is going to take place in terms of wind, in terms of potential accumulations of rain and or snow. I mean, we're losing data. We should be getting more data or relying on more data. And here, they're just arbitrarily now, they being the folks who are in charge of the government, are just cherry picking and saying, all right, we'll get rid of this site and that site and this site, without even thinking about what the implications will be. And down the road, if we have an outbreak of, let's say, tornadic activity in the nation's midsection, and later the forecasters are blamed, you didn't tell us, or you didn't warn us in time, or whatever, what are the forecasters going to say? I mean, my goodness, you took away some of our valuable data that we rely on to make these forecasts. I mean, it's only after the people who are the ones who are doing this and taking all this stuff away from us, when something happens to them, then they get all upset. Right now, it's meaningless to them. It's just like, they're weather people. They can deal with this kind of stuff. They're not accurate to begin with. But it's a very, very important in our toolbox, so to speak, in terms of making forecasts. This information is most valuable, and we should be building on it and actually adding more data and more information, as opposed to doing what they're doing now, which is arbitrarily just taking it away here, there, and everywhere. It's very, very, very bad, I think.
Yeah. So, Pat, I mean, in your experience too, with the challenges of forecasting, especially on radio, I mean, trying to get the data, tell the story, does this also pose a concern for you?
I agree. I think it's a real big loss for us. I mean, we have a problem right now with computer models, generally speaking. I don't feel they are as accurate, at least 5 days out, as they could be. And I think the reason for it is that we do need more data. I mean, let's face it, how many times have we watched a system in the Pacific coming ashore and projecting that this could be a big winter storm or even a big tornado outbreak? And we said, well, we have to wait for it to reach the West Coast so that we have more data in the computer models and it gets a better handle on it. I think with the Pacific being such a big hole in data and now taking these stations away, it can't be positive. It has to be negative.
Yeah. So we've all heard about the government cuts and what's going on. I mean, they're obviously doing a broad brush with a lot of, what might be very necessary cuts, but should they really be getting into the critical weather forecasters and data that we use every day? I mean, we've been doing this all our lives. I think you're right. Less data is not what you want, Bill, right?
Oh, of course not. I mean, here in Long Island, we have the balloon going up and out at Brookhaven. And so, if it's a day where we're trying to figure out rain or snow, right after the launch, we get the data. We can see exactly where the freezing level is, exactly where those winds aloft are. So, yeah, it is an important thing. I know there are other ways of getting some of the data. Like I mentioned, airliners, a lot of them flying now are constantly transmitting wind and temperature data back down to ground stations. And I suspect satellites can fill in the gap a bit. They can do some profiling. But this is, yes, old time technology, but with new time instruments that are on there. Oh, by the way, as these things go up, they eventually, people say, what happens to balloons? Well, they get up to maybe 70, 80, maybe 90,000 feet. The balloon ultimately bursts and the instrument package starts to fall back to the ground. A little parachute opens up. Now, the ones that are launched here are generally blown out to sea, but elsewhere in the country, you may find a little instrument package on your front lawn with a little parachute attached. Well, there's a sign on it says, please drop it in a mailbox and send it back to us. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. And like I said, we, are rely on, we need as much help as we can get with weather, with the forecasting, as complicated it is, especially here on Long Island. And like you said, with the tornadoes too. Um, I mean, is it something that the public, you think, will eventually notice, Joe Rayo? I mean, is that something that's going to happen, where the public will start to say, hey, you guys are not, giving us what we used to always have? Will they notice that, or is that just something that's going to be absorbed?
Well, I'm sure that the government, that the National Weather Service, the Department of Commerce will do their very best to put out as good a forecast as they can with the data that they have available. But I'm sure that sometime down the road, maybe a year or two or three or whatever, in the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society, for example, that somebody's going to write a paper in making comparisons to the accuracy, the forecast accuracy of events such as, let's say, severe weather, tornadic activity, or maybe in the wintertime, coastal storms. They'll make a comparison between what we were able to do, let's say, in 2020 or 2022 or 2023 versus what we may be doing, let's say, in 2027, 2028, without a lot of that data. And I'm sure that you're going to see a most definite, a most noticeable drop in accuracy. Not a tremendous drop, hopefully, but a noticeable drop. And or there'll be times when we're just, literally, shaking our heads and pulling our hair out or whatever, trying to discern what is going to happen based upon the data that we have to work with. It's very, very difficult. Overall, weather models do a great job when you're thinking about this in terms of over a span of, let's say, a few hundred miles. But we're not doing that. We're trying to forecast and pinpoint the weather for specific zones, 5 boroughs of New York City or Long Island or whatever, a much, much smaller region. And when you're trying to tell, somebody, well, you're going to get 2 inches of snow, the other guy out east is going to get maybe an inch, and then it's going to change to rain. It gets more difficult when you don't have that information, that data available. Now, interestingly, yesterday on my Facebook page, and if you're a member of the AMS, the American Meteorological Society, or if you were one time a seal holder, as I was, you get, courtesy of the AMS, each week, a whole slew of articles, meteorological and weather-related articles from various journals or whatever. And I always look at that. They come on a Wednesday, come on a Tuesday, I should say. I look at this information and I say, oh, well, this looks like an interesting article. Why don't I post this on my Facebook page? Well, yesterday, one of the articles dealt with, and this was from Time Magazine, not some schlock, magazine or whatever. I mean, from Time Magazine, and they indicated how much money is going to be taken away and what is going to be removed from the NOAA and NASA budget, and how this might affect weather forecasting down the road. I said, this is a great article. I'll post it on my Facebook pages. And no sooner did I do that, but immediately there was blowback. I would say it was 60-40. 40% of the people who posted a comment said, yeah, blah, 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 blah. You complain. He says, it's not going to make a big deal and anything. One woman actually said, stick to weather. And I wrote it back and I said, wait a minute, hold on. I said, this is a Time Magazine article about the science of weather, about atmospheric science, and about what may be happening down the road because of the cutbacks. What are you talking about? Stick to weather. But anyway, it was 40% blowback from, I guess, people who believe that it's not going to be a big deal. I'm thankful, though, that about 60% came to my side and said, if you don't like what Joe posts, just move on. Don't make a comment or whatever like that. Or people who actually said, this is very, very significant. This may have a say in weather forecasting down the road and may affect weather forecasters both on television and the private sector and at the weather services. So I was happy to see that, but I was not too happy to see that there was a rather large percentage of people out there who believe, like, who cares? Cut away. It's not going to be a big deal. It is going to be a big deal, a very big deal, I think, down the road. Maybe not immediately, but down the road. And I, for one, do not like what I see looming on the horizon for the Department of Commerce, National Weather Service, NOAA, NASA. This is not good news at all.
Yeah, I hear you, Len. Yeah, Joe Chaffee, go ahead.
I'm sorry for being late, but today was the monthly Blairsville dog luncheon.
Of course. Don't want to miss that.
Joe Rayo, you noticed that I came on the white horse yesterday, and
I did.
I came to your defense. The thing that really kind of gets to me is how little money it costs for that the Weather Service uses in terms of tax dollars. It's 4 cents a day. Okay, that's what it comes out to. It's like $14 a year or 4 cents a day. And in terms of the return on investment that taxpayers are getting by paying that 4 cents a day is enormous. I mean, why are we even looking at the Weather Service or NASA or so on when the cost savings is almost non-existent that they're going to get out of this in comparison to the whole government budget. And Joe and I talked about this last night. Everybody is for tax cuts unless somebody else is getting the tax cut and you're not. Everybody is against tax increases, but when it's on them, not if it's on Bill Corbell, who's one of the billionaires that they often cite.
Yeah.
So, and ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a taxpayer. Okay, so I have a voice in this conversation, regardless of the fact that I'm doing weather, and maybe I'm talking my book. But either way, I'm a taxpayer. I am permitted to have an opinion about these sorts of subject matters, and I'm with Joe, and I'm sure the rest of you. When you get people that give you blowback, it's what am I supposed to do? Sit around with duct tape on my mouth? I mean, it's really, really ridiculous, some of the reactions that people get, and it's all emotional. It all comes from politics. And look, as I always like to take the other side of the trade in this sort of stuff. If the government's aim is to reduce costs and cut jobs, there's no easy way to do this. Okay, there's no graceful way to lay off however many people they're going to lay off. It's a very messy proposition, and it's going to be painful, and it's going to be noisy, and you're going to get all sorts of emotional reactions that are going to come out of it. But at the end of the day, this is not an easy task. And with respect to this particular administration, they have a limited amount of time in order to accomplish whatever they are trying to accomplish with regards to reducing the federal budget.
Yeah,
I'm kind of sorry this got political. That wasn't my aim here. I wanted to keep it meteorological, and because that's something I'm involved in many different ways. But we'll see where it goes. Just I hope it's not the first step, and that will diminish our abilities, our being the weather business.
Unfortunately, Bill. Unfortunately, Bill, we live now in the 21st century, and if you try to talk about something in a scientific fashion, you're immediately there's a certain percentage of the population who will point at you and say, "Oh, you must be one of those liberal Democrats." Or if you're against the idea or thoughts that global warming may be harming the atmosphere, oh well, he's a conservative. There's no way around it. You're immediately branded in this society by that way. So
and Joe, being that I would probably guess that we're all moderates, both sides hate us.
It's amazing how that works. Yeah, and you know what it is too. What I always say, Weather doesn't care your political affiliation. It doesn't
Nope.
care if you're a Democrat. If a hurricane's going to hit Florida, it doesn't say I'm going to only hit the Republicans, I'm going to hit the Democrats. It doesn't care. It's going to do what it's.
I've been told otherwise. I've been told otherwise. I've been told that I'm sitting here. Wait a minute, hold on. Let me get on my phone because I hit a few buttons. We just lost Peoria. I mean, this is the kind of mentality that we're dealing with. It's sad because it really speaks to the state of the education system. It speaks to how little people know how or understand about what we do and how it works. And frankly, for the most part, either side doesn't care. What all they care about is whose side are you on? Because if you're on the wrong side, you will be stretched at the rack, burned at the stake, and beheaded.
You know, and also Bill mentioned about how the weather balloons, they go up to a certain altitude, 80, 90,000 feet or whatever, and then they burst. And the average person will say, well, why do they burst or whatever like that? I can immediately go into a little discussion about Boyle's gas law.
Yeah. Okay.
But nobody's going to
You'll make lots of friends with that one.
No one's going to understand any of that. But the thing is that, and Bill can relate to this more than any of the rest of us. One of the people yesterday on my Facebook page, in opinion, said, "Well, why listen to Rayo? He doesn't believe in chemtrails either." And Bill, I know you went through a long litany of complaints about your lack of wanting to believe in chemtrails versus contrails. That's how the public.
I don't want to get into conspiracies because there's no way out of it gracefully.
That's going to be another episode here on weather modification and control, which eventually we'll do here. And you got to hear what I hear. I've got some crazy relatives.
You know how I shut those people up? I'll shut those people. If somebody comes after me by saying something like that, I'll just come back and say, look, I have a degree in Earth and planetary science, and I've been in this business for over 40 years. What are your credentials? And well, I heard this on social media, and and he's a. No, that's not going to work. That's not going to fly with me.
I just tell them now 3 words. I don't
care.
And that makes them even angrier.
Guys, I think what we'll have to do is that, like Joe Rayo said, down the road, if they continue to cut data from the computer models, well, the only thing we can do is restrict ourselves to a 3-day forecast, perhaps out to 5 days, and forget about long range and just stick to short range.
Ouch. Imagine that.
Yeah. Here's a question on what you propose, Pat. All of us have a number of people that follow us for the right reasons. Okay, they want quality, accurate information and opinions about what we do. And I wonder if we focus on those who, no matter what we say, they're just going to criticize and insult us and all the rest of us. And instead, let's focus on those who know what we do, who understand what we do. And I mean, are we punishing them because we don't want to, because we don't want to have to deal with the blowback? I don't know. I kind of look at this, and I kind of tend to take the opposite view, in that I'm not going to stop what I'm doing and how I do it and where I do it in order to placate, gas bags that are out there that are going to be negative all the time. People that respect our work, they know that if we're going to talk about something that's out 6 or 7 or 8 days, that there either is validity to it or there isn't validity to it, and they trust our word on that. I would rather make those people happy than to give in to the losers that are on the other side.
Good point.
Yeah, it's been like this for a long time, and like I said, Bill started the conversation with the objective nature of physically losing data, and of course it gets passionate, because as meteorologists, we want the best with what we can. It's hard enough to do it with everything we have, and then you start losing stuff, Bill. Right? That's an impact, right?
Yeah, the more information, the better the forecast. It's always been that way. Looking out the window gives you one idea, and that's a little bit of it. Hey, do we have a second for something else?
I think we do. For you, we do.
Know what? Anybody know what this is?
What is that?
It looks like a fancy schmancy French water bottle.
Okay, come on now. Come on, weather guys.
Well, what are you balancing in there?
Temperature. Yeah, temperature.
Oh,
Temperature. This is a Galilean thermometer.
No
He
kidding.
didn't invent it. It was named after him just after he died. Basically, it's a tube filled with some kind of liquid, maybe an alcohol. And these balls all have a different density liquid in there. So as the large area warms or cools, these go up or down. And the bottom one shows you the temperature. Right now in this room, if you can see it, it says 68 degrees.
68.
And my thermometer outside says 69 outside the room. So it's kind of cool. It's pretty and it's very accurate. And this is 400 years old. Not this, but the concept.
That is cool.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah. Where'd you pick that up from?
Little gadgets there. Where'd you get
I
that?
don't really know.
What garage sale did you find that at?
I don't know. It goes all the way up to 80 degrees. Isn't that cool?
Where'd
And the
you
bottom
get
one
it?
is 68. See, it's just starting to warm because I've been holding it. The 68-degree one is dropping, and now it says 72 up there.
Right.
It's
Where
pretty.
did you
nice
Where
thing.
did you get that?
I have no idea. I don't remember.
That you just were cleaning out the closet one day, and there was that
I
Galilean
must have found
thermometer.
it someplace at some store, maybe one of those mall stores that have weird things, but it's really cool.
Bill's got all these gadgets here. Oh boy! I remember one time we were doing something. He pulled up a drone and yeah, I got a drone right here.
I have
Like,
that out here
right
too.
here, I got a drone here too.
Let's not get into drones, okay? We've done enough today.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid going to Jones Beach. God, this must be like 50 plus years ago or whatever. And you'd go to the they had a place where they'd sell little knickknacks and tchotchkes and everything. And the thing I always loved to buy, they had like the water tower at Jones Beach, but it had a coating of cobalt chloride on the front. It felt like felt. And I still remember the limerick. It said, this water tower has a wall of blue when skies are fair and clouds are few. Its color turns to pink, you see, for rain or high humidity. But when it has an orchid hue, then you know a change is due. And it was a nice little water forecasting thing on a postcard. It cost like 20 cents or whatever, but I love getting that every time I went to Jones Beach.
That's
Wow.
too funny.
That's crazy. Anyway, but we did talk about, Bill, the skew tees, and I wanted to go back to this for a second here because, the skew tee goes back. Now, you tell me, I mean, when was the first skew tee kind of invented? Did it coincide when the first balloons went up?
Probably or shortly thereafter. The reason it's called a skew tee, instead of a regular graph where you might have temperature straight up and down and altitude this way, it would be very wide. So they tilt the temperature axis to make it fit a square page. Either way, it's all the same. But you can plot the temperature and dew point on here and the winds as well. And from that, you can determine all kinds of things. One critical thing is the relative stability or instability of the atmosphere. You can look on here and determine various things. A big thing now is something called the CAPE index, convective available potential energy. Essentially shows you how prone or able the atmosphere is to produce or not produce thunderstorms, and minor ones or big ones. And that's calculated from this data. So again, that's why I mentioned Tornado Alley. Without this, they have less information to determine what that stability or instability index is. But we also look at it. If you fly into the West Coast, you can determine not just the winds, the actual winds, but where there might be turbulence. You can get cloud tops and cloud bases, where there could be in-flight icing. All this out of these soundings that are plotted. And once upon a time, again, we plotted them by hand. You got the code, you put the temperature and dew point, and the wind, and you drew this thing. Now it's automatic, but it's still a wealth of information from many, many areas.
Yeah. So, Bill, you were in the Air Force, obviously government and the workers here who work at the Weather Service Forecast Office, whether it be at Fort Dix, whether it be up in Upton. their staff has been, basically, I think, getting better and better. I mean, my opinion, from what I've seen over the decades, their website, their data,
Yeah.
their, has been getting better. So does this mean we're coming to a stall now? Are they going to not be able to improve? I mean, what's this looking like?
I would think it depends upon how many people retire and how many new people come into the system, but they have to keep it going. You can't do without it. You cannot fly you can have an airline without having good weather reports to determine your routing. Think of the money you can save by getting a route that saves you 30 minutes from coast to coast. You're saving a whole bunch of money. So I think there will always be enough people to make the forecast, and maybe in the future, actually, with AI, they may not need all of us,
Well, I've already said that my guess is within the next 5 years, you're probably going to start to see AI coupled with Doppler to issue severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings.
Yeah, it's almost that way now. But and there's nothing wrong with it. AI is amazing, the things it can do right now. But the best forecast, I think, I don't know if you guys agree, is a combination of the computerized technical stuff and the experience that you have up here. That combination always works.
Women and machine.
Yeah. And I've heard things, maybe go to Pat, question for Pat. In the past, we've heard, obviously, Joe Sobel, Elliot Abrams over at AccuWeather, they've been on a mission to kind of privatize, what the National Weather Service and the government's been doing for many years now. This didn't just start this year. This is going way back when, Pat. So you were back in the day, you may have been hearing about these ramblings. How would you feel about a private company now taking over, what Noaa's been doing for many years?
I remember appearing at a seminar with AccuWeather, and that was one of the things, just many years ago, one of the things that they wanted to do. They said that the National Weather Service should be kept for warnings, watches, etc., and that the private sector should take over all the forecasting. And of course, being a private weather service, I was all for that, and I still am. I think it would not be a bad idea for the government to strictly be the one to do the warnings and watches, and the private sector should do all the forecasting. And then we don't have to worry about red screens, blue screens, orange screens, and all these alerts, because only one department would be responsible for warnings and watches.
Interesting. Any comments on that, Mr. Rayo?
Well, I can tell you that I worked at a private weather forecasting service for a number of years, and one of our people who we hired came from State College and worked for a short time at AccuWeather and brought with him the AccuWeather playbook. And I can tell you that playbook, I wish I had it now, but you thumb through it, and it was kind of looking down their respective noses at the National Weather Service. I do remember one particular paragraph that said, when you put out a forecast here at AccuWeather, don't be weather bureau-ish, so to speak. They were not very pleased, apparently, or happy with the way. I remember scattered showers. That was an inaccurate term in the eyes of some of the forecasters there. Never use scattered showers in your forecast. Never, ever go for a high of 76 one day and 77 the next day.
Guys, I'm sorry. There's a call I got to take. I got to step away. Okay. I'll be back.
Okay. Well, see you later.
So it has been ruminating, at least at one private weather forecasting service for many, many years, decades, in fact, about their displeasure to a degree with the National Weather Service. And I'm sure that, they would hope that, that privatization does come about. However, it's one thing to be in charge of a private weather forecasting service with dozens or maybe even hundreds of people. How do you replace Noaa or NWS, who has 13,000 people? 13,000.
How about the infrastructure? Is accurate. I'm not going to shouldn't mention name. Do they have the supercomputers that will replace what the government has and uses? Let's face it, they would be out of business. All of us, private people, would be out of business if there was no National Weather Service and Noaa. We can't do it on ourselves. What's the data everybody uses? That's where it comes from. Privatizing it won't do that. And just And just going from warnings and watches from the government and local forecasts from a totally different entity kind of doesn't make sense, because there can be clashes. Oh, they put out a hurricane warning for Long Island. No, I'm not putting it up. Doesn't make sense.
No, and in fact, Bill and Pat and Rich and Joe, if he's able to hear wherever
when he comes back,
I tell people in the private sector, we are nothing more than GPs, general practitioners.
Yes.
I'm certainly not an expert in severe weather. There is a division, however, of Noaa in Norman, Oklahoma, where there are people who are nothing but experts in forecasting severe weather.
Yeah.
There are people who are long-range experts at the Climate Prediction Center. I am not a long-range weather expert. I know enough, and I'm sure Bill and Pat and Joe and you, Rich, too, we all know enough of meteorology to be able to ferret through all of this and put out generalizations. But if it goes to privatization, you've got people who are like ourselves, GPs, and not experts specifically in one facet of meteorology. That's going to hurt, because, again, I would not know specifically if it came time to a life-threatening situation in a severe weather situation to actually go online and say, this is going to be, a life and death situation in terms of severe weather, or making a long-range forecast based upon El Nino or La Nina. Again, just being a GP, not being a specific expert. NOAA and the Department of Commerce and the National Weather Service, that is what it's all about. You have specific experts who are knowledgeable in a specific branch of meteorology who are making specific forecasts, not, again, people who just arbitrarily know, it's a hurricane. Well, I think it's going to go this way. I've known more than a few private forecasts who say that the storm is going to go this way, as opposed to what the official folks down in Miami at the Coral Gables is saying about the storm, saying it's going to go that way. And let me tell you, whenever something like that happens, I go with the guys down in Miami. I don't go with my gut feeling or privatization of forecasting, because they're the guys who know. They're the people who know what's going on and how to forecast for it.
I'm going to put two things out there with regards to privatization. First off, I wonder whether this is something like, be careful what you wish for, that private companies are just not going to be able to do what the Weather Service does. I mean, we're talking about the whole United States. It's a vast, huge, vast network. To be able to handle that is an enormous undertaking. I don't know. I don't even think, the big boys in the private world would be able to handle that. And then, the other thing is, and this might be where the fight is a little bigger, because our world is all about data. And the Weather Service made a very conscious decision when they said, you know what, we're not going to build weather apps for ourselves. We're going to give the data away and let the private people go out and build the weather apps that are, basically all over the place. So I wonder whether this is more about the control of the data, who gets control of that, versus, having a private company, say, be responsible for, the Pacific Northwest or the Southeast U.S. or any other particular region. Data is very, very valuable.
Agreed. So, Bill, since you started this whole mess today, why don't you wrap it up with your final thoughts? Because I think this is a topic we can really talk a lot about. And most of my colleagues, I think, are on the same page that we are, professional meteorologists. But, Bill, what's your thoughts on what you've looked at with the radiosondes, the balloons, and the launches? And is there anything that's going to possibly change, or are we kind of heading in that direction?
I think everything is in pretty good shape now, the way it all works, from the satellites, the radars, to the information we get. And that comes down to those of us who are in the business to give out the information in understandable ways. We all have our skills. But let's face it, weather affects everybody, unless you're living in a cave someplace, never come out. And even there, I suppose it could affect you. Everybody's affected by the weather. And, with tornado season coming, just watch what some of those things do. Hurricanes, you can't avoid it. We are very prone. We are very in an area now where weather can affect all of us immensely. We may not think it, but it does. We're
I
not.
have a good way to finish this out, Rick, with 7 simple words. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Leave it at that. That's pretty good. Yeah. And again, just to our credit, like we've been showing and we talked about in our last episode with technology evolution, back in the day, we did a lot with a lot less. We didn't have all the technology today. And my worry is that this new generation has gotten used to that that level of technology being there. And what happens if all of a sudden it's maybe not as good as it used to be? Is there going to be an uproar? Are people going to say, hey, pay these people, get these people back in the chair. Let's get what we need for safety and for our needs as meteorologists. But then again, I'm not I'm not in that club. As George Carlin used to say, it's a big club and I'm not in it.
Okay.
But thank you. This was a good conversation, good discussion today. Bill, thank you for bringing the images, the photos, and Joe, thanks for jumping in, Mr. Chaffee. Good to see you. And,
sorry I was late. But,
okay.
It's a dog lunch, so I had to go.
I do what you got to do. We all get it. All right, and we'll have more discussions like this going forward. I believe there will be opportunities for us to keep the conversation going and do some more stuff. So again, just like you say, you can always check the Joe and Joe show out every Sunday to Thursday, 7:35 p.m. Eastern time. You can check out Pat Pagano's weather forecast all week long on these wonderful stations. Always check those out. It's great to hear from Pat. And you can check us out on the YouTube and Facebook on Weather Express Long Island. Bill and I popping up some forecasts now and then. So there you go. All right. Great conversation today, gentlemen. It's good seeing you. Weather Legends, we'll be back again with some more cool stuff. Check out our YouTube channel at Weather Legends, Metro New York area. Have a great one.
Bye-bye.